This new Trump tell-all book from his own niece is roiling the White House and Washington, D.C., and raising questions about whether it could even affect his reelection bid. In fact, there's a lot of stuff in the book you could just read out loud and sit back with. To that end, we're going to show you Rachel Maddow, who did exactly that just last night.
It had all started in 1977 with a 3-pack of Bloomie's underwear, meaning Bloomingdale's underwear. Retail $12. My very first Christmas present from Donald and his new wife, Ivana. I barely even knew who the F she was, honestly. But then she gave a great speech during the campaign in Georgia, supporting me. My daughter-in-law, I didn't even know who the F she was, honestly. He tells Mrs. Trump, Melania, that his niece, Mary, had a terrible drug problem. She said in the moment, whoa, no, I've never done drugs in my whole life. She says, quote, he slid me a look and smiled. He was embellishing the story for effect, and he knew that I knew it.
Donald Trump may not be all that into books, but he knows how to use them. And joining me now is someone who co-authored a book with him, Art of the Deal. Also a friend of the show, Tony Schwartz. Also, as I've mentioned in past broadcasts, someone who's gone on to be critical of President Trump. Good to see you, Tony.
Nice to see you.
I look at this and I see another book which Donald Trump understands as potentially pivotal. You guys wrote a book together, and he wrote it to the top of the charts and turned it into a brand. I'm curious, given all that, your views on this.
Well, I'm very interested in the parallel. So she, too, was a ghostwriter in she was the person who was supposed to write the book, the second book, after I turned down that opportunity. And she found that she couldn't get anything from him because there wasn't anything that he had to give. So she didn't end up doing it. And now she is, 30 years later, writing what I think is, I see this as one more tipping point in the descent of Donald Trump. And I do think it will have a big impact. I think not just because it's a family member who observed this up close, but because she does bring the psychologist perspective to this.
And when you look at the power of this, there's many ways we get information now, and yet a big book from the right person with the right insights and access, it still can move the needle.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, Ari, is an accumulation of needle movers in terms of one disaster for Trump after another. And there is a tipping point. And I think, again, that we probably reached it. I think the really interesting thing that Mary Trump's book brings up is not so much its revelations. We know all this kind of stuff already. It's just more of it. It's the insight into his childhood. And one of the great tragedies in this country is the inattention to the shaping influences in our life. You know, there's something called the Adverse Child Experience Study, the ACE study, which shows that vast percentages of Americans, of people, have had traumatizing experiences. It's not the exception, it's much more the rule. And if we don't pay attention to the shaping influences in people's life, in Trump's case, an abusive father and a neglectful mother, we're going to end up having very disturbed human beings acting out in the ways that Trump has. Add the money into that, and now he's got a platform, and we're all suffering from it.
Yeah, and Tony, that's something that comes up in the book that you did co-author with him. Maybe protest too much, but I'll read with regard to this relationship. The niece's book is arguing, as you just alluded to, that Donald Trump was stunted by the overbearing father figure, that he found a way to collaborate with his father while others suffered under him. Here it says in that book, your book, I was never intimidated by my father the way other people were. We had a relationship that was almost businesslike. I sometimes wonder if we'd had gotten along so well if I hadn't been as business-oriented as I am. Tony, what's that all about?
It's a lie. It's not true. He was totally intimidated by his father. He was terrified of his father, and he lived to please his father, as his own 5 children do, and particularly his 3 first children. I think what that is telling us is that this is the story he built around how he managed the terrible impact that his father had on him. And listen, it's no excuse. Trump's behavior is not excused by the fact that he was traumatized by his parents. I believe he was, and he's still subject to the social contract. He still has an obligation to be part of the commons. He is not. But it is true that if we had a world in which we took seriously the kinds of deprivations and costs that children who are so defenseless when they're young incur because parents sometimes are themselves so screwed up and sometimes just are busy doing their own thing. And meanwhile, the child suffers from some kind of lack of attention. We need to pay attention to this. Listen, when I wrote some weeks ago, The Psychopath in Chief, which is a psychological perspective on Trump, I wrote it on Medium. I sent it to 6 or 7 mainstream media publications. One of the most prominent media magazines in the country, the editor-in-chief wrote back to me and said, we don't do this kind of piece, i.e., we ignore the whole interior of human beings. And I couldn't get that piece published. So I published it myself. It got 500,000 views. It shows you that people do want to know about what's going on inside them, because you can't change what you don't notice.
Right.
Trump,
well, it's a challenge. Yeah. It's a challenge because I understand the journalistic bar of trying to stick to evidence. And when you go interior, it's harder journalistically. To your point, it's very relevant to everyone's lived lives. The CIA does not avoid doing psychological analysis of the other leaders. I'm out of time, but Tony, I'll also say, as a longtime interviewer and beat friend of yours, the title Psychopath in Chief really captures that understated energy you bring to so much analysis.
Well, you know that I come and with a very relaxed attitude toward all of this.
A relaxed attitude. We have to laugh at ourselves, and I know when you're upset and angry, you're angry about where America's going, which I do think a lot of people also relate to. Tony Schwartz, we'll see you again. Thanks for being here. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.